So we all know how artistically beautiful Federer's forehand is, but it's also incredibly powerful. Let's check out some of the power sources that he has that you can copy. Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video we're going to discuss the Roger Federer forehand power sources. Now, this video is courtesy of Zen Rackets on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to their awesome channel. I've put their link in the description below. Now, right off the bat, not easy to copy this, but there are some things that you can absolutely implement in your game. The first thing is when he turns, notice this position right here. Look where he's reaching with his left arm. He's reaching across to his right. You'll notice his chin is on his front shoulder. That's because his body has rotated. He really hasn't done anything with his head. He's still just looking forward. But now one of the hallmarks of coiling properly is when your chin is resting on your front shoulder. So do that on your forehand. Turn and put your chin on your front shoulder and you'll have coiled correctly. The next thing you'll notice when he steps, he's using a neutral stance, which a lot of players people like amateurs, club players, they think that that's wrong. It's a great stance to use on a lower ball. Typically when the ball is up here, you don't want to use a closed stance, but when the ball is low, it is an absolutely great stance to use. And you'll notice that when he lands, that's when he then turns his hips. So watch this again. He steps, and then that's when he begins turning his hips into the shot. Now let's talk about that hip turn and what happens with the racket. You'll notice that as his racket's dropping right here, that the tip of his racket is pointing right at the camera. And just look where the camera is. Notice the camera is in front of the baseline. So the camera person is in front of the baseline. What that means is that the racket's orientation is way in front of his hand. So the racket's on the outside of his hand. And what we then see is when his foot hits the ground, and because he's coiled, now we're going to see him uncoil. And when he uncoils, leading with the lower body first, and then the upper body, subsequently happens after that. Notice how his hand pulls forward, and because of the immense looseness in his hand, especially his pinky and ring finger, which are really the fingers that control the tension in your hand, when he pulls that hand forward with the upper body rotation, that's when that big lag occurs. Now, why does this help him? You look at Shapo do this, you look at Nadal. When this occurs, it produces what's called a pre-stretch. So a pre-stretch in the forearm, or technically called a stretch shortening cycle. This is where all the tendons and muscles and skin and everything in the forearm, everything stretches. And when that occurs, the moment it stretches, it's like a rubber band, it wants to go back to the way it normally is. And when that happens, it actually helps to accelerate the racket head. This doesn't mean it's super easy to do, right? And so I don't hit my best forehands doing this, but you can try this and it's simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's simple. You got to drop the racket on the outside of your hand. You can see the tip of his racket is pointing the same direction as his body. And then when his foot hits the ground and he begins rotating, he's so loose. He's not throwing the head of the racket back on purpose. That's not what happens at all. He's just pulling and the racket head snaps back. The weight of the racket is what stretches the forearm, and then the racket head catches back up to contact for that amazing racket speed that he can produce. Now, there's something also happening right here with his body, and this is a reactive break. I want you to notice something. I want you to look at the rate of his rotation when he is pulling his hand forward. So look at his body rotating. So here his body, as we mentioned, is facing off to the side. Here, as he's hitting the ball, we can see that his body is facing directly forward. Now watch his body's rotation and watch when he hits the ball how his body stops rotating. Notice this right here. No longer was his body rotating. It's amazing. This is just called a reactive break. He is rotating his body, and then right here, he starts to pull that arm in just a little bit. His left arm starts to pull in just a little bit, and when it pulls in, he slows the body's rotation down, which is another way of accelerating the racket head. So look right here, how there's very little body rotation. And that snapping of the forearm and snapping of the racket to contact is then accentuated by accelerating the hitting shoulder as he's hitting through contact. So here are the things you can copy. Turn with both hands. Get that non-hitting arm across the body, putting your chin on your front shoulder. If you want to try the lag, by all means try it. It's not easy. I would say about 10% of players can actually do it well enough that it's the best way they can hit a forehand. But when they drop the racket on the outside, or he drops the racket on the outside of his hand, when the racket gets low down by his knee, you can see his racket head is down by his knee. That's when he starts rotating the body. Obviously, he's got a closed racket face at this point. That's what allows his racket to be square or slightly closed at contact. You can see he's not rolling over the ball. He's just penetrating through the back of the ball with a ton of power. He's obviously swinging low to high for topspin, but this slowing down of the body, he's not over-rotating when he's hitting. You don't just see him rotating his body around where his body then faces off to the left. He's keeping his body very much facing forward, which allows the racket head to snap through. Obviously, this is not easy to do, but here are simple things that you can copy to improve your forehand as well. Now, if you're looking for a convenient way to practice the Federer forehand at home, get yourself a Topspin Pro. You know what to do. Click on my affiliate link in the description below, and I'll pin it in the first comment. It would mean the world to me if you got a Topspin Pro using my affiliate link for at-home practice, so thank you so much. Now, what's nice about this is we can take the top shield off, and by doing that, we can have a little flatter penetration into the back of the ball rather than having to swing so steeply up. And this is going to give us that more Roger Federer swing through the back of the ball. So the first thing Federer did is he turned and he had his chin on his shoulder. So he took the racket back with both hands, and you could see him turn, and he got this arm across. And if I'm hitting this way, I'm putting my chin on my front shoulder. This is such an easy way to make sure that you're turning enough so you can uncoil into the shot. So on your forehand, put your chin on your front shoulder, because your body is just going to rotate and your shoulder goes under your chin. Now the next thing, this isn't super easy to do, and a lot of players can do it, but not many players can do it better than the conventional swing. You know, you look at an Alcaraz, right? And his racket drops like this, and his racket actually drops behind his hand. One of the things that I like about his forehand is that the racket drops behind his hand because it's very easy to copy. What Federer does, though, is he drops the racket on the outside of his hand. And then when his hand gets down, he turns, and that snaps the racket head back. It's not an active movement. It's just nice and loose, really loose. And when he pulls the hand forward because the body rotates, then the racket head snaps back. That stretches the forearm, and like a rubber band wanting to come back to its normal form, when you pull, it's this pre-stretch that Vic Braden talked about 30 years ago, and that stretching wants to bring the racket head back to contact, and it's a way to get a few more miles per hour. It may hurt your control. I just want to say that. Again, this is for power and speed. It may hurt your control, so try it, and if you hit a better forehand, great. If not, just go back to the more conventional Agassi way of dropping the racket, or Del Potro way of dropping the racket behind the hand. When he makes that move, he then has built up a tremendous amount of racket speed, and that's where we see at contact his body rotation slow down. Federer doesn't just keep rotating as he hits the ball, but rather he turns and then stops the body. This arm kind of pulls in a little bit, and then the racket accelerates and the hitting arm just flies. Just like on the serve, when you have a reactive break and the hitting arm accelerates, you can use a reactive break on the forehand as well. You just got to make sure that on the forehand that you are hitting topspin with a reactive break. If you're hitting side spin with a reactive break, or heck, even slice, it's not going to be pretty, and the result is just not going to be what you want. So you got to make sure that you're hitting topspin. That's what's nice about the Topspin Pro. You'll make sure that you're doing the reactive break with topspin. Let me show you this from the back view. I'm going to turn. I'm hitting the ball this way against this wall. I'm turning. My chin is on my front shoulder. I drop. Racket is to the outside of my hand. I'm going to rotate. And by doing that, that's what throws the racket head back. And then as I turn and rotate my body, I stop, and the hitting arm accelerates. So let me hit a couple here, and we will do the Roger Federer. Of course, it's not going to look just like his because I'm not as good as him. Get a Topspin Pro so you can practice this, but work on those 3 ideas. Put your chin on your front shoulder. Work on and learn a pre-stretch forehand. If it works for you, great. If not, no big deal. There are plenty of amazing world-class forehands currently and in the history of tennis that do not use that lag. And last, work on having a reactive break where you stop your body in order to accelerate your hitting arm. You work on these ideas, there is no doubt. You're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.